I'm Dr. Angela McKaye, chiropractor and naturopathic physician, and it is Motivational Monday, and we've been talking about gut health all month this month. So today I really want to talk about the gut-brain axis and the connection between what's going on in the GI tract and your mood, whether you're experiencing anxiety, depression, or other things that may be going on, and how what's going on in your GI tract really can impact what's going on with your brain. There are a lot of things that we've talked about already that lead up to this, so it might be helpful to go back and review some of those videos. But in your GI tract, you have a lot of your immune system functioning there. So there's an interface in the GI tract that regulates your immune cells, your T cells, and in general your immune system. So if that gets activated and there's inflammation in the gut, it's going to throw off your GI tract and cause some dysbiosis that can lead to inflammation ultimately in the brain. So where we were talking about leaky gut before, you can end up having leaky brain as well. And in fact, if you have a leaky gut and have had a leaky gut for some time, it's not just a quick short-term virus, short-term infection, chances are you have leaky brain and inflammation in the brain as well. We're going to talk a little bit about how that system interacts between the two areas of the body that seem to be totally unrelated, but are actually really closely related. A lot more now than we ever used to think as more and more research becomes available. The gut bugs that we've been talking about, they make neurotransmitters. They make dopamine, which is our reward neurotransmitter. We usually think about that as coming from the brain, but dopamine is a neurochemical that signifies a sense of reward. It can give you an elated mood. It's associated with being an extrovert. Maybe extroverts have a little bit more dopamine than the rest of us. The gut bugs also make serotonin. You make a lot more serotonin in the gut. You've got more serotonin there than you do in the brain, in fact. And so this is also a neurotransmitter and a neurosignaler, and it's associated with happiness and feeling motivated and a sense of calm and being able to think clearly and being in that rest and digest state. The microbiome in your gut is also responsible for production of GABA, G-A-B-A, which is a large molecule that shuts down the neurons and slows everything down. It's inhibitory, so it allows for relaxation. Some people use it as a supplement to help them with sleep. If you're taking it as a supplement and it's really effective for making you slow down, relaxed, or feeling groggy, chances are that your brain is leaky because it's a big enough molecule it shouldn't cross the blood-brain barrier. Norepinephrine is also made there, and so that used to be called noradrenaline, and it's important for being alert, being able to pay attention, being able to stay awake, and being able to focus. Gut microbiome also has a role to play in cortisol production. So it doesn't itself make cortisol, but it does send signals to the brain that in turn send signals to the adrenals that then produce cortisol. So if you are having a problem with stress and cortisol production, then the gut bugs can definitely trigger you to make more. So when we're talking about a feeling you have in your gut or a gut reaction, those sorts of things are very, very real and can trigger an overall full body hormonal response. And so it really is a second brain that is reacting to your surroundings in real time. The gut bugs also have an influence in hormones called ghrelin and leptin, and this has to do with your feeling of hunger or feeling full and your appetite, and it has a lot to do with your weight and metabolism. So some of that, if your gut bugs are off balance or you've got the wrong kind of gut bugs, can throw you off and lead to problems with your metabolism, with gaining weight and having difficulty losing it, and with appetite control. In the gut, you also have your own endogenous opioid release, and so we think of opioids as like bad drugs that cause problems, that can cause addiction, or pain relief medications after surgery, for instance. But you do make some of your own opioids. You can make some of your own endorphins, for instance, after exercise, activities that are enjoyable. Chocolate helps you make some of your own, which is always a good one. We also have cannabinoid receptors in our body, so we make our own internal cannabinoids that fit into those receptors, and there are a lot of them in the gut. So this can be really important for people with autoimmune disease such as Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. You can utilize those endocannabinoid systems to help mitigate some of the symptoms of inflammatory bowel disease. The complex nature of your microbiome is specific to you, right? There are different groups of people throughout the world. They have different diets. They have different varieties of diversity of gut bugs in their system. And then over time, there has been less diversity in every population around the world, but there are some people who have more disorders in their gut flora than others. So that's been found to be true in certain conditions. Sometimes the flora is really off for people who have Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or autism. There's research going on for ALS and the gut-brain connection, as well as bipolar disorder. This is true also, there's been some research for depression and anxiety as well. And so they're finding that transplanting different people's microbiome from a healthy person into somebody with one of those conditions I just listed gives them some benefit. The whole concept of fecal transplant sounds horrific for a lot of people, but they found that there's benefit even if the transplant's been sterilized. So there's no living bacteria in it at all. Still does seem to bring some relief to the recipient if they've had a healthy donor. That's still under active research and there are FDA rules around that. The only thing that procedure is approved for right now is a bacterial infection called C. diff. It's important to note that even though diversity is diminishing around the world, diversity is the key to having a healthy gut microbiome. So different things that we talked about previously this month can wipe out your microbiome. That can be an illness, that can be bacteria infection or a viral infection. Any number of things can alter your microbiome in a way that is not healthy. But the more diversity that you have there, the better for you overall. And your biome is going to be different than somebody's biome from the other side of the world. And you can both be completely healthy and still have completely different gut bugs. So there's not any one size fits all in terms of which strains are the best. There's more and more research coming out on which strains are associated with which illnesses or which strains seem to be beneficial to treat certain illnesses. But there's not one mixture that's a solution for all things that is the ideal microbiome. We've talked about how the microbiome can manufacture some neurotransmitters, and it travels along the path to the brain and back from the brain to the gut. So they're really in constant communication with one another. And it does this through local nerves that are spinal nerves, go up the spinal cord to the brain. There are also autonomic nerves and the vagus nerve that go to the brain, and then the brain is also signaling back to the gut. And so they're in constant communication all the time, which if you have inflammation in one area can set forward a cascade of inflammation throughout the body, including the brain, that can lead to mood disturbance. If you're having any of the symptoms that we've talked about in the past month regarding gut health, or you're having issues with anxiety, depression, obsessive thinking, and you're doing everything that you can along that route, one thing you may be missing is the gut-brain connection. So if that is something you want to talk about further, feel free to set up an appointment and get in and get seen. And it is Testimonial Tuesday. So I want to share a case with you this week. We're talking about the gut-brain connection. And I want to share a case with you of a 38-year-old mom of 2 kids, ages 4 and 6, who describes having been constipated her whole entire life. And so she doesn't ever remember a time when she wasn't constipated and didn't have difficulty passing stool. So she also was experiencing fatigue, which has gotten worse since she became a parent. But now that her kids are sleeping through the night, she's wondering, what the heck, I'm still so tired. And she also suffered from anxiety and depression symptoms. She wanted to go a natural route, and she came in because of the constipation. We tested her for SIBO. That came back negative. She wasn't having the bloating and the gas and some of the other things that come with SIBO, just the constipation, difficulty going to the bathroom, difficulty passing stools, and a little bit of cramping, but not severe enough to really cause a big problem for her. We did the normal gut repair stuff that we always do and included some probiotics, and we went through a couple different blends of probiotics to change up the different types of flora, the different strains of bacteria, and give her as many different strains as possible. And we did the other things along with that, including some dietary changes, clean that up a little bit, making sure she got plenty of fluids and hydration and everything else. By her 1 month follow-up, her energy had increased. She felt like she was in the toilet when we started at like a 2 or 3 out of 10, if 10 was a fully charged battery. And by 1 month, she had already improved to a 6 out of 10 most of the time, and feeling much better. And then by the 3 month mark, she felt like her energy was an 8 out of 10, and she was having regular bowel movements 6 days a week. So she might have one day where she skipped going to the bathroom, but most of the time she was having regular bowel movements and not any discomfort or difficulty passing those, and was feeling much, much better. Her anxiety symptoms decreased. That took a little bit more time. I would say that was more pronounced by the 3 month mark, but her mood improved dramatically. So she felt like she had more energy to interact and keep up with and play with and really enjoy her kids, and also be able to do all the things that she wanted to do between work and her home life and everything else. So that is Testimonial Tuesday. If you can relate to that and you're looking for a little help, feel free to give us a call and set up an appointment or schedule online. We're talking about the gut and brain axis, or the gut mood axis today, and I want to give you a couple of tips that can be important for starting out your day on a better foot. If you are not sleeping well, that can really throw off your gut microbiome, because remember that your microbiome responds to stress, and so when you're under stress you make less stomach acid, which can alter your flora, and then the flora, the microbiome itself, can trigger the brain at times to make more cortisol. There's a big reaction there, so if you're not sleeping for prolonged periods of time, that is going to throw off your GI tract. Nobody feels great when they don't get good sleep. So if you're having trouble sleeping and you don't know why, it could be your gut signaling to the brain, it could be your brain signaling to the gut. In any event, you need to disrupt that cycle so that you can get better rest. Another thing that we've talked about in the past is some easy warm breakfast to wake up to that's nourishing for the GI tract. And I just want to include one more, and that is miso soup. I love miso soup in the morning. Miso is a fermented soy product, so it has some healthy gut bugs in it, and it can be a really soothing, easy start to your day. It's very flexible. You can put lots of different things in there and have a nice, warm, especially this time of year, welcoming way to start your morning. If you have any questions, drop them in the box. Maybe send us your favorite morning recipe to get started for your day. Thanks. When you're thinking about what you're eating or putting in your body, be mindful that you're not just eating for you, you're eating for you and a cast of millions, right? So you also have to worry about your health, but also sustaining your microbiome, which is also looking after your health as well. Hi, I'm Dr. Angela McKaye, chiropractor and naturopathic physician, and this week we're talking about the gut-brain axis, or the gut mood axis, and it is Tactical Thursday. I want to talk about some tips to help you out with that. So we've talked about all the different neurotransmitters that your gut can make and signal to your brain, and the communication between the brain and the GI tract, and that goes both ways. And we've talked a little bit about diversity in your microbiome. And so one thing that I always recommend to patients is that they switch through probiotics. Now, probiotics are not for everyone. Certain probiotics in certain conditions are not the right probiotic for you. This is especially true if you have Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. There's certain probiotic strains that you want to avoid. And it can be problematic sometimes for people with SIBO if you introduce the wrong probiotics or introduce them too soon. For people with SIBO especially, you want to not introduce any probiotics that have FOS. And FOS stands for fructooligosaccharides, and it's also known as prebiotic. So if you see something that says FOS or prebiotic, those are certain fibers that those gut bugs that are in the wrong place will really love living off of that food, and it'll cause you lots of symptoms. So for everyone else, and for those with SIBO, at the right time when you're ready to introduce probiotics, I recommend switching through different brands periodically. So you want to find something that has a high volume of like several million. You want to find one that has a pretty wide diversity in the strain of gut bugs available. And hopefully you want to find something that doesn't have to be too fussy. So there are some really expensive probiotics that have to be refrigerated, and you have to be really careful with them and treat them gently. And I don't recommend those unless they're absolutely necessary. So some of my favorites we'll talk about in Friday favorites, but some of my favorites are actually over-the-counter ones that aren't too cost prohibitive. But even those I want you to rotate through so that you're getting different things every 3 months or so. That is all I have for you for Tactical Thursday. The other things that we've talked about that influence your microbiome include what you're eating, whether you're sleeping, whether you're able to be in the rest and digest mode. So keep track of all the hygiene things, and then I will talk to you next time. And it is Friday favorites, and we are talking about the gut-brain axis, or the gut mood axis, and your GI health and how that affects mood. So we talked earlier this week about how getting a good night's sleep really does set up the system so that the signaling between the gut and the brain remains happy and soothing, and how important that can be. So I recommend sometimes having in the evening, especially now that it's colder weather, having a little bit of chamomile tea or some soothing warm drink that will help you get into your bedtime routine. Part of the natural falling asleep cycle is that your body temperature does drop. So something a little warming, like a warm bath or a warm tea before bed, helps sort of make you a little bit warmer so that your temperature then turns into dropping, which will make you feel more drowsy and hopefully fall off to sleep a little more easily. The other thing I promised to tell you about were some of my favorite probiotics. And so I like ones that are not fussy, that don't need to have a lot of babysitting, and that aren't cost prohibitive. So if you can avoid spending a ton of money, I recommend that where you can. There are times when spending the extra money is important depending on your situation, but if you can get by with spending less, I am all for that. So one of the things that I recommend often is Align, A-L-I-G-N. That probiotic is easily found on the shelf. It's stable on the shelf. It's had some good research behind it, so that's one of the ones that I do like to recommend to people, and you can find it at Rite Aid or Walgreens or Freddy's or wherever. I do recommend switching through different brands and different strains. So there are some people that do really well with a soil-based probiotic, And probably the most popular one of those is something called Megaspore. Those you have to get through a healthcare provider. They're a little bit more difficult to find and they're a little more expensive, but they work wonders for a lot of people. I have a lot of patients that swear by Megaspore. And so including that into your rotation of the GI gut bug mix can be really helpful for a lot of people. There are other brands out there that I like as well, but I don't want to give you too big of a list to get through here. That's enough of a place for you to start. If you have any questions, you got any comments, or you want to tell me what your favorite probiotic is, drop me a note in the box and let me know.